Elementary school taught me that every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. My mother taught me that there's before and afters in life. Starting at the beginning of my story would be difficult for me because I'd have to figure out which beginning to start with. So instead, I'm just going to start at the turning point in my life, which I believe took place just before I picked up the phone and called a place aptly named Turning Point for victims of domestic violence. It's a shelter for people like me. My mother also used an expression commonly used to demonstrate how being too close to or too focused in on a single subject can prevent a person from recognizing the full scope of an experience. Can't see the forest through the trees. I tell you this because part of me feels I'm still too in it to objectively share my experience with you. Another part of me knows that true insight and understanding can be a fleeting gift, easily lost in that forest as time goes on and our focus shift. I originally became a client at the domestic violence shelter a year before I actually went to it. I had called them and was approved to come into the shelter, but instead I accepted an offer to stay with family members. I have a loving family who sincerely wanted to help me out, but after a couple of weeks of looking for apartments and trying to plan on my own how to make this major life transition and to leave my abuser, I became very overwhelmed and I returned home. In the following months, my husband's sincere attempts, and I do believe they were sincere, to make changes in his behavior just began to unravel. In turn, my resolve to handle his behavior differently began to deteriorate. I was angry with myself for my decision to return home. I felt more stuck and alone than ever as I remembered my relative's voice saying to me in his warning, "You're welcome to stay with us, but if you go back to him, you're on your own." I felt weak. I really felt like I had failed. Failed myself, failed my children, and even failed my husband. As is the case in most abusive relationships, the abuse went from bad to worse. In September, it had escalated again enough that I once again had to call the police for help. My husband went to jail that night. He returned home at the end of the following workday. Still feeling stuck, I just went on like nothing happened. So did he. So did our children. It wasn't until very shortly before leaving my home to go to the shelter that a thought occurred to me. If I had cancer, I would feel so blessed to have the support of my family on my journey. But I certainly wouldn't go to them to help me treat it or cure it, or for that matter, I wouldn't try to figure it out on my own. My home did have a cancer. The type that's aggressive and complex. And even quite possibly lethal. Then in November, my snowbird parents, who had stayed with us for the summer, left to return to their Florida home. The dynamic of having them in our abusive home is a subject that merits its own discussion, but I mention it now because when they left, I was unprepared to realize that they were the last connection I had to the rest of the world. One morning, as I struggled to find something to feed my 5-year-old before sending him off to school, he said, "Mom, you really need to ask Daddy if we can have something to eat. We need to have more food in the house." It wasn't a moment of realization that how ridiculous it was that I had to ask him for more food. It was a moment when I realized how ridiculous my son thought it was and how aware my small children were of it and their wisdom of it. And that morning I drank my coffee after I sent them on the bus. I drank my coffee and I began to see how isolated I had no food in the house. And I mean none. I wasn't allowed to collect the mail delivered to our home. I was denied the right to purchase medications prescribed to me. I had no access to the family funds, no transportation, no internet, no cell phone, and the knowledge that at some point in the day, our home phone was going to be turned off. Because of these things, you may or may not be surprised to learn that we were not living like that because of poverty. The recent downturn in the economy affected us like everybody else, but we were holding our own. We were doing okay. And I began to realize how ridiculous that I have been struggling for months to feed my children while existing in a very large, newly remodeled home that sits upon 8 acres of land on a lake with a swimming pool and hot tub, gardens, a volleyball court, and a large outbuilding that stores our 30-foot riverboat. How ridiculous the tears that I had shed. How ridiculous the tears that I had shed and the upheaval and the violence that took place in our home because I was begging for $3. How ridiculous. How ridiculous. It's pretty horseshit. How ridiculous. The tears I had shed and the upheaval and the violence that took place in our home as I begged for $3 to buy my 16-year-old daughter a box of feminine products, as he was setting up a new 82-inch television in the family room. All these thoughts rushed through my head, and in that moment, I became overcome with despair. I felt hurt, mad, but mostly panicked. I stopped for a moment, and I prayed for God to give me some strength. And then while I still had a telephone, I called and spoke to an advocate at the domestic violence shelter. She listened to me, allowed me to tell my story, and then validated my concerns. She expressed her own concern for me and my children's safety and well-being, but she didn't belittle me or further my feelings of powerlessness by insisting I accepted the help being offered. She let me know that the help I may need may be there if I was willing to take it. We made a plan for me to come to the shelter with my children and to stay there and to begin coming up with this treatment plan for this cancer that we've been living with in our home. The following afternoon, while he was at work, I came to the shelter with my 16-year-old daughter, my 5-year-old son, and my 3-year-old daughter. It's a very strange and humbling experience asking for refuge. Maybe even stranger accepting it. But I did get over it quickly as I visited with some of the housemates I had there. I learned how similar each of their stories and reasons for being there were to mine in one way or another. My kids and I spent a little time at the beginning just getting used to our new surroundings and even getting used to peacefulness. I also met with my designated advocate who really put me at peace, not only with my decision to come there, but she also put me at peace by helping me to sort my thoughts and to look at my options, which included working things out with my husband and the possibility of preserving our family. That part actually was a big surprise to me. I appreciated that I wasn't made to feel pressured to just end my marriage and put an end to everything. It felt good. I wasn't treated like a harebrained idiot for still loving my husband and still considering the possibility of repairing our family. Somehow I think that helped me move in my mind from a place of fear to a place of love and logic. Prior to that, my options felt so all or none, leaving me frozen with the fear of the possibilities of either choice. The child advocate helped me work out matters of transportation to and from my children's schools, and even met with my children to help them make sense of the transition. They actually had fun with it because of all the crafts and other resources that the advocate had to make them feel more relaxed and less on the spot, even for my teenage daughter. I started attending started attending the domestic violence support group offered at the shelter, and I also got my kids involved in the child support group. Did you know there's women out there right here in our area that not only have had similar experiences as mine, but have similar feelings about them? I've kept going on a regular basis. The advocates also helped me get into contact with available resources that would all help me to become more independent and self-reliant. Government agencies, community outreach programs, faith-based programs, legal agencies, housing resources, employment resources, you name it. It's out there. There's a lot to consider and a lot to learn about. It's an education all of itself, but I learned the trick to navigating my way through the same seemingly complicated tasks that overwhelmed me before was to think very basically. Consider the important things: our safety, health, happiness, and housing. I found out if I focused on those things, the most basic state things, that the rest appeared to just kind of fall in place. I think, though, one of the most profound things that I found at the shelter was something I didn't expect nor realize I needed probably the most: nurturing. We were nurtured not only from the advocates and the counselors and the other people that we came in direct contact with at the shelter, but we were also nurtured by the community that surrounds it and supports its purpose and mission. We felt it. We felt the compassion and the support as we lie under our hand-sewn quilts or wrapped our children up in little fuzzy warm fleece blankets that were made lovingly by the community members. And after a day of frustration and tireless phone calls, working on our recovery, can you imagine what a relief it is for us to just find out we don't even have to cook dinner because somebody dropped one off for us. We were all strengthened at one point and comforted by seeing a local religious leader take the time to sit and pray with one of our housemates in her time of despair. That Christmas, for my children and I, the words peace and joy were more than words printed in glitter on wrapping paper. The material gifts from our Christmas sponsor were so appreciated, and we have carried the compassion and the graciousness with us long since my children grew out of their beautiful clothes and the toys that were picked out for them. It's an amazingly comforting and empowering feeling to a person in my position to know that people I didn't even know unconditionally cared so much about me and my children and the other families struggling like ours. Thank you, whoever you were, wholeheartedly for nurturing us and strengthening us. Like I said, I'm still working my way through this forest of recovery. I still struggle with the feelings of fear and becoming overwhelmed. But the efforts and the support of everyone working with the shelter has kept us going. The support of my friends kept us on course so we can make a better future for our family. That experience was almost 3 years ago now. In that time, I went home. I went back. And it wasn't until September when he came through a 6-panel solid oak bedroom door that I decided it was time. Time to make a change. Time to make it stick. I know I'd done it before, and I wasn't successful at it. This time was different. But this time's different. This time we're going to make it. This time we're going to do it. I have great support for family and friends, and my friends at Turning Point, the domestic violence shelter, my church. We're going to do it. We're going to be okay. Right? Yep. We're going to make it this time.